appeals for harsher punishments for lockdown rule breakers, and 365 new COVID cases. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.heise here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your stein of coffee because we're going to look at a news.com article which is discussing, well, the high number of cases that's occurred in New South Wales today, and what's quite interesting is the poll in this article. Everyone, now let's just jump here to have a look. So New South Wales reaches a grim new milestone with 356 new cases and 3 deaths. Now this is sadly a sign that this is not going anywhere real quick. So, New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian has confirmed we've reached a bleak new milestone as cases spread throughout the state. A staggering 356 cases were recorded today, smashing Saturday's previous record of 319. Tragically, the death toll has also risen by 3 to 32, and there are significant concerns after it was revealed around 1/3 of today's cases were in the community while infectious. So, and this is the poll I want to draw your attention to. Should there be harsher punishments for lockdown rule breakers? 9% of people are saying no because it will discourage people from coming forward. That's my concern with regards to this, that you'll discourage people for coming forward if they have the illness, and if they may have breached lockdown, they may lie and say where they are, and that can just exacerbate the problems. But 91 says, yes, throw the book at them, they deserve it. And this is a 23,000 vote poll. Now, I understand exactly where people are coming from. If someone is infectious, if someone knowingly breaks the rules they don't care, or they're acting, selfish. Like that one guy who was infectious went all over, Byron. So I can understand why people are frustrated, but I'm concerned that if they make it too harsh, it'll get even worse. So it's a tight juggling act. What do you think, everyone? Do you think they should be harsher on people who knowingly break the rules? And you've got all other people that go out there and protest. Some of them are nuts, but some of them are at wit's end. They've lost their business. They're getting no support. They're getting no help. Which way can you have it? But it looks like the majority have had enough. People are getting frustrated. People are getting annoyed. People are getting angry. So, let's have a look here, and you can see here 356 new cases. It's that's tough. Living under a rock. COVID breaches lashed. Brad Hazzard has again laid into those who have flouted stay-at-home orders to travel outside Sydney. My frustration here is that you would have to be living under a rock not to know that we have serious issues with COVID in southwest Sydney, he said. And then to deliberately go to Newcastle or outside Sydney with no apparent reasonable excuse is just completely unacceptable. But that's the sort of thing we're getting, and it's enormously frustrating. He said cops were using registration plate detection to bust those who do the wrong thing. Here's the issue. The cops are going to be bloody frustrated dealing with people who are just knowingly travelling all around. PM speaks out on New South Wales' difficult day. Well, we'll have to see how it goes tomorrow, everyone. It may be even a much worse and much more difficult day. The PM has stepped up to discuss the grim IPCC report, but first address the Delta outbreak that is devastating New South Wales. Now, this IPCC report, I haven't gone through it, but there you go. Now we're conditioned for lockdowns for the pandemic. I'm sure there'll be some people that will be pushing to use the same strategy to alleviate the impact we can have on the environment. I'd love to see a way to address the carbon burden that Australia is putting on the planet is to become a completely carbon neutral nation with nuclear technology and free electricity for all. Wouldn't that be awesome? Anyway, the news out of New South Wales today, hard news, real difficult news. 356 cases, 4 reported deaths. We're in a tough fight with the Delta strain, a tough fight. And I want to thank everyone across New South Wales right now right across the country. Other places are going through lockdowns as well. But we know that the fight in New South Wales is the toughest of all of those fights, and there's a lot to stake. Now, I want Australia to get to Christmas, but I want everyone around the table at Christmas time. We'll do everything we can to achieve that goal. See, here's the thing, everyone. There's talk about lockdowns until Christmas. There's talk about mask restrictions here in Queensland until Christmas. Hazzard grilled over a massive vax question. Health Minister Brad Hazzard has been repeatedly questioned over why COVID jabs haven't been made compulsory for aged care workers yet. On July 9, an agreement was reached that public health orders would be put in place, which would make that possible. But here we are a month later, still waiting. With respect to aged care workers going in now with coronavirus infecting people who are in nursing homes, potentially killing them, how long do you want us to wait, a reporter asked. As I said, we'll work with the federal government as to precisely what they want, and we will get done as soon as possible, he said. Here's the thing, everyone. You're going to see calls. We'll get mandatory vaccination, healthcare, aged care, childcare, disability care. They'll start, the no jab, no play. They'll lock that into it. Then you'll start seeing vaccine passports roll out because people are just frustrated. You can see here, look at this. You can look at this, see this, how many people are frustrated. So, why lockdown isn't working, this will be interesting. The Premier and Chief Health Officer are being grilled over why case numbers keep spiking despite our ongoing lockdown. Well, because the lockdown doesn't stop all the case spikes, but Dr. Chand said it was a case of the virus spreading too far too quickly and that greater compliance in some communities was essential. Once you've got that force of infection, it's really hard to turn it around. And that's why I think we will need to redouble our efforts, she said. And I appreciate that those communities have been heavily impacted, but there is also the disease burden in those communities. And so I think that we need to further work with those communities to really ensure that compliance, and as I said, it's the whole government approach to supporting those communities to adhere to the public health orders. Well, you need to make sure if you're destroying the livelihood of people by locking them down, you need to make sure they're taken care of. It's like you're locking down different quarters of the city during the plague. That's what this is. Concerns over compliance gaps. New South Wales Chief Health Officer Dr. Kerry Chand has weighed in on what needs to happen to get the crisis under control, warns we need to do more. In general terms, we need to further decrease mobility and community needs to adhere to the orders, she said. We're still seeing a lot of unnecessary movement of people. We're also seeing compliance gaps. An example, when I was talking to one of my public health units, that they reported a partner had visited a close contact. These are not the actions that we want to see when we're dealing with a virus as transmittable as COVID. She said decreasing mobility, decreasing the possibility for interaction, meeting the density restrictions, adhering to your LGAs, if you're in those affected communities, and also for people outside, not going to those affected communities were key. We need to do more if we're going to get the case numbers down. Cops are investigating the Byron rule breaker. If you're going to have a community that's hesitant to get vaccinated, it's going to be in Byron. Well, Nimbin's worse with anti-vaxxer movement in Nimbin. It's their mecca, isn't it? Mr. Hazzard has weighed into the case regarding a COVID-positive man who broke Sydney's lockdown to travel to the Byron Bay region with his teen sons, who have since tested positive. All I'm prepared to say about one traveller to Byron is the police are looking extremely closely what he was doing in the area. I trust the police will be able to take appropriate action in due course, he said. There are matters where one has to be a bit cautious because I'm not going to prejudice part of the police investigation or the police actions. He said any activity deemed to be illegal will be dealt with by police in the courts. So you can't legislate against stupidity. Well, if only the government would learn that in so many other things. Wouldn't that be great? I really don't think they realise that. I think a lot of people think you can legislate against stupidity. New South Wales Health Minister has slammed COVID rule breakers, claiming authorities can't legislate against stupidity, arrogance and entitlement. People will still try and do it, which is why the Premier has made the point that we have been asked in the epicenter at the moment of the virus, that is Canterbury. Bankstown for the police to reinforce the existing rules. Cops nab COVID rule breakers, and there we go. Gladys depressing lockdown clue. What's this? One word uttered by Gladys Berejiklian today hints that the Greater Sydney lockdown blowing out well beyond August 28th deadline. Well, it's not going to stop in 18 days. I'll bet a carton on it, guys. Not with the case numbers that they're getting. Not with the deaths that they're getting. It's going to keep growing. Urging people to come forward and get vaccinated, Ms. Berejiklian said it was the only way to get back to work and back to normal life. It is the key to what we can do potentially in September and October, she said. I look forward to seeing those vaccination rates continue to go up. I assume by today we're at 4.5 million. We'd like to get up to 5 million by the end of the week. A mention of October doesn't seem like good news for those still clinging to their hopes of freedom by the end of the month. So there we go, the latest blog post from news.com.au, written by Alexis Kerry, discussing what's happening in New South Wales. 356 new cases. So what is the solution to all of this? Well, now that I'm on my soapbox, we need to consider a few things. Lockdowns are now the de facto response to dealing with this. They're pushing everyone to vaccinate as fast as possible. One of the reasons is that while there are ED implications to us, emergency department implications, and then pushing people onto ICU, with the ICU timeframes that people are spending with COVID compared to other illnesses is higher. So it's putting a greater strain on the capacity of the healthcare system than other illnesses, even with the total numbers. So you can see how they're worried it'll snowball and they'll run out of capacity really quick. You've got a lockdown where people's livelihoods are getting destroyed. People are desperate. They've got no other choice. How many people have to work? How many people are getting no support? The government, if they're imposing these restrictions on people, they need to ensure these people don't become destitute. They need to ensure that these people don't resort to crime or don't resort to having to breach the rules that you want to impose upon them. I would like to see an increase in the capacity of our healthcare system as a long-term exit strategy to get out of this mess, because lockdowns have a economic, psychological, scarring effect on our communities. Victoria's just had their 6th. How long can this keep going? So we'll have to see. Hopefully there'll be a path out of this. But does Australia, do Australians, do our leaders have the stomach to handle a certain number of daily deaths? Do you? Will our politicians ever be capable of that? We'll have to see, because that may be the case even when we have full vaccination. What do you think? Anyway, guys, thank you all for watching. Like, share, subscribe to the channel. If you're a fan and enjoy the content I create here, there are a few ways you can support us. You can join us on YouTube or Patreon. Sign up for SelfWealth or Stake. Use our affiliate links at Amazon, eBay, Independent Reserve, or AussieBroadband. Buy our merch from HeiseSays. Use Gold Pass from the Perth Mint, or support us via PayPal. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.